about 6 weeks ago, Jason, if not a little longer. Basically, just with all the information that goes in, you come up after some hours or some days, all depending on the person and the information, you come up with an overall perspective on all of this information that you've gathered in. It comes back up from your subconscious. Your mind goes through some rational process, and you have an overall view. I don't know if they're going to recreate September 11th, but on a much greater scale as far as multi-terrorist attacks in the September timeframe. But just given the fact that we have these two major areas, the economy and a flu pandemic foisted upon us, and everything that comes with that pandemic and that economic collapse, all happening basically at the same time.
And you know what? That would also allow them to really have the man-based infrastructure in this country for a real martial law as they kind of let us along, again, incrementally, saying, oh, well, we have to have troops by the schools because everybody in the school has to take the flu shot, and we've got to get everybody in the neighborhood down here because we got 6-year-old girls dying in the back of cars after just having a tummy ache and singing songs. And you just talked about the money situation. I talked about this really briefly yesterday, the bill that gave another $106 billion towards the operations in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I wasn't sure, but I said, these are probably SDR units. Well, they're worse. They're another new form of international currency. What are they calling these ones? The president's insistence of including an additional $108 billion in asset exchange with the International Monetary Fund is merely buying global oppression. That's exactly what this is. Let's see. He's calling it an international bailout, and $5 billion of it officially is in SDR units. However, they've got another thing. It's some kind of a borrowing agreement that we're making now with the IMF. It's just lovely. And then we've got China saying we want major reserve currencies. Let's get rid of the dollar. One of the lessons that the global financial crisis has taught the world is that the top reserve currency should be kept stable. The top reserve currencies. Remember when it was the dollar was the main reserve currency? It's not anymore. This is a bankster takeover. When you put the Federal Reserve in charge of oversight, when they're the problem, I mean, the populace has lost it. They have no idea what's about to come down on them. But Ron Paul is trying to warn people. I thank you for the call, Mark. Let me just read this one off Raw Story. Ron Paul, the popular Republican congressman from Texas, is ripping into the president and Congress for what he sees as their goal with round after round of stimulus. Complete economic collapse. Let me say it again. Complete economic collapse. And Jones and others have had Bob Chapman on. They say they're about to have a bankster holiday. From their spending habits, an economic collapse seems to be the goal of Congress and the administration, he said in his June 22nd, 2009 weekly address. We just gave an additional $106 billion in military operations to Afghanistan and Iraq, among other unrelated items. Remember, none of those are shutting down Guantanamo Bay, by the way. You know, you would not have to allocate $1 billion to shut down Guantanamo Bay. I promise you that. We're actually voting in favor of wars, not just authorizing the president's agenda. The president's insistence on including an additional $108 billion in asset exchange with the International Monetary Fund is merely buying global oppression. Paul added that this bill sent $660 million to Gaza, $555 million to Israel, $310 million to Egypt, $300 million to Jordan, and $420 million to Mexico. To Mexico, this bill. We're sending almost $500 million to Mexico to fight the war on terror in Afghanistan and Iraq. Do you understand? And some $889 million will be sent to the United States for United Nations for so-called peacekeeping missions. So almost $1 billion to the UN as well. In other words, the latest U.S. war funding was an international bailout. The legislation's provision for the IMF include $100 billion for the new arrangements to borrow. That's what they're calling it. New arrangements to borrow, or NAB. It's a credit instrument providing the multilateral institution with additional resources to deal with exceptional risk and stability of the international monetary system. So now they're calling it new arrangements to borrow. SDR units, new arrangements to borrow, death of the dollar. Dollar's not the reserve currency anymore. It's out. They're cutting it out. Brazil, Russia, India, and China are meeting. And they're talking about how they want a separate reserve currency. They're calling for global governance. Zach in New York, you're on the line. Yes, Zach.
That's brutal.
It's true. I mean, what can I say? It's mainstream news. It's Reuters. It's Associated Press. It's all over the place.
Okay, I didn't see it. That's kind of what I'm interested in. Where did the Ron Paul thing about?
Oh, this Ron Paul thing right now is up at Raw Story, but you can just listen to his address. But yesterday I went over the Reuters article where it talked about the $106 billion to military operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. And what Paul did was read through the bill and explain that, hey, $660 million to Gaza, $555 million to Israel, some money to Egypt, Jordan, Mexico, and then almost $1 billion to the United Nations to further legitimize NATO forces.
Hold on just a minute.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yes, sir, Bermas.
Uh-oh.
Let me just explain something. We're talking about foreign aid. They're saying we're going to pay China, Mexico, and everybody else. We are going to pay our money so they can then buy carbon credits to then pay it back to the bankers. So we pay tax money to the private Federal Reserve. It takes it and it gives it to the countries to adopt the carbon credit system, the global tax, and then they pay the tax back to the bankers. Kind of like we give them the banker bailout money to quote to the banks, and they just keep it for themselves. I mean, this is on every front. The point I want to make is, and we're writing articles about this tomorrow at Infowars.com, because separately the feds are taking over all the water.
We'll be back after this with Alex Jones's analysis, Infowars.com.